And imagine the questions coming in later on, Jonathan, on that. And don't be picking on my death nurses, please. Great revenue earner every month, so it is. So it's good, actually. Sorry. Mr. Concannon is about to reconfigure the room, which he's used to doing. While we're doing that, John Concannon is a graduate of the class of 1996. He's director of Ireland 2016. He's working 23 hours a day, doesn't see his wife, and is travelling the length and breadth of the country for the last year. He's going to talk indeed today about nation branding in a globalised world, Ireland 2016. So in your own time, John, if you don't mind, just take us through it.
Great. We'll just get the technology sorted here. There we go. Great. I was going to say it feels like being back in college, but it actually is being back in college. So no, it's great to be here and to see everybody again. I actually remember when I just before the DMP, I was finished the master's program. And it was summer 1995, and nearly the whole class had emigrated to England. I was going as well, or America, and I rocked over to Jim's office as he talked about. He didn't offer me a job though, but he did say, what about thinking of the masters or the diploma? And I subsequently he put me in touch with Mel Morgan, my first boss. Mel, hi, and Mel was marketing director at Dubarry Shoes at the time. So. Couple of weeks later, I had my first ever job interview, a real job interview, not like a bar or something. But it was in a bar. It was in Lonergan's down in Salt Hill. So Mel bought me a pint, and then about an hour into it, I said, okay, I better buy a round here. So bought a round and subsequently spilled it all over Mel, and said, okay, that's it. I'm definitely not getting this job anyway. And then he drove. We came home later on, and he said, okay, so listen, when do you start? We'll start next week. And so it was a great experience, and he's talked all the plans we're going to have. So I started a couple of weeks later on a Monday. And then on the Tuesday, Mel goes, well, listen, the news is I'm leaving. And so that was it. So I was the marketing department for on my own for a while, which was a fantastic experience. Of course, before digital, before anything, it was the real hardcore. And then Mike Walsh, who's also here, became my first real boss, and really it was a fantastic experience because the thing was in the master's program, which of course was modelled on the Harvard program of case studies and Kieran Beer and Komatsu and all these fantastic things, but to actually work in the real world of manufacturing in the west of Ireland, where the focus is 207 people downstairs and making shoes and to pay the wages and just that reality of having to shift products. How many shoes did you sell? How much? It was a brilliant experience. And I think Mike learned a huge amount from Mike and the way in terms of just looking at data, looking at the business, applying marketing practice. And I subsequently on and worked at Unilever for a good number of years. But all that experience, I think, and it's been a huge success story, Dubarry. And I think, Mike, certainly great credit to yourself in terms of transforming that business. It's something I think as an Irish brand we can be very proud of. So well done, Mike. So anyways, so we were talking to Anne of what we were going to chat about, and I was going to just talk about a couple of case studies. After one of the areas I've been working on the last number of years is in Fáilte Ireland, and what we wanted to do was just show, I suppose, how applying the marketing practice to some of the work we've done. And starting out, one of them is the home holidays market, as we call it. So going back about 10 years, Ireland, the focus at the time, and it still is very much get international revenue in, but the Irish market at the time, 2003, 2004, was growing a lot. People were spending a lot of money internationally on their holidays. But unfortunately, all of that short break market, which is kind of 2, 3, 4 nights, was all being spent internationally. Because we're driven by a huge explosion in cheap flights. So people were going away to Amsterdam, to London for the weekend. And then when you said, what about Ireland? Surely Ireland. And at that time, I was just starting the job, and people said, why is we weren't getting any growth in Ireland? It was all going internationally. He says, I like Ireland, but the truth is, it's a little bit boring. There's not enough lot happening here. It's dull. And but the truth was, of course, it was the exact opposite. There was mountains happening in Ireland. We have a huge festival portfolio. We have mountains of things to do, destinations, and so on. So we did a lot of research. When people said, it is very boring, but and we said, well, what would a campaign look like? We're going to do a new campaign. So, well, you're going to have a couple walking on the beach. You're going to have diddly-eye music. You're going to have someone teeing off. So they're playing out all these old sort of paradigms in their heads. So we changed a lot of that around and produced a campaign which hopefully will work here. The sound mightn't work altogether great. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, this campaign was called it was called Right Here, Right Now at the time. Let's just see, yeah. Well, it sounds not great. But anyway, the whole idea of this campaign was all of the things that, all of those perceptions people had. You know, it has to be walking on a beach, so okay, well, let's put things like kite surfing into it. It has to be a diddly-eye music. We had an unsigned garage band at the time. So statistically, nobody in Ireland does kite surfing. So, you know, the thing was, well, no, I remember presenting this concept at the time to Fáilte Ireland. They're like, are you mad? You know, who's kite surfing? Who's going to do that? But the point being, and as we researched it, and an interesting demographic that we researched this whole campaign with at the time was the older market. At the time was called the Golden Years. The Golden Years market, so it's been since the 80s, Fáilte been marketing to the Golden Years, which you'd expect sort of over 65s or so on. So when we talked to them, and we were doing the research, you know, so what do you think we should do? And they're like, oh, what do you think of the Golden Years program? And they're like, you know, the Golden Years program is fantastic for the old people. I said, well, you know, this is the people in the 60s and early 70s saying that this program was great for the old people. And in fact, this campaign that we did, the Right Here, Right Now campaign, which shows all this stuff, tested by far the highest with that demographic, because that's what I want, that's the Ireland I want to be in, but they don't necessarily want to do any of it. So it was a great campaign. We got about, it really repositioned Ireland and got us moving and growth. The next phase in that campaign came when really about 2007. Then we had this huge crash in the economy, and absolutely everything was changing in terms of our own how consumers, every family was impacted, and so on. So huge squeeze on cash. So this was a big concern for us. Now at this point, Ireland is now the biggest market for Irish tourism businesses. If you think the West Coast, it's by far the biggest. Galway, Westport, Kerry. So you're talking to people and all they're talking about is just being broke. I don't have money, I'm skint, and so on. So what was happening in other sectors, and Jonathan talked about, was you had a huge focus on value and value cards and value and discounting. And so the sort of hypothesis at the time was, you know, we need to just focus on price. We need to focus on value. Just get the price down and people will do. So anyway, we're thinking, well, maybe that's right, but maybe it isn't either. So we went and talked to people and said, well, again, and the point I'm making here is just the use of this, but the principles of marketing, really getting into a lot of focus group work. And so, well, where are people? Where are you feeling at? 2008, this was, you know, people have been laid off, so companies still running, but basically people felt like totally snowed in and said, look, I'm, you know, maybe there was 3 people doing the job, now there's 1. And then at the same time when they felt totally snowed in, there was this wall of bad news. You know, most people had a clue what it meant, NAMA, NERA, all these things that were happening in the ICB, CB and so on. So they felt, so the overarching thing of the general punters in Ireland was, look, they just feel, I absolutely have had enough. I just can't deal with this anymore. And they really weren't processing all of the information that they were hearing. And so what they were kind of thinking of is, okay, well, you know what I'm going to do? I just want to cocoon myself in my house. I just want to, this is really, I can deal with what's in front of me. I can deal with my own family and my job, but I can't really process what's going on in the broader world. And I was trying to find an image, and maybe this was an even more appropriate image in terms of how people felt at that time. It was like, just look, I can deal with very close in, and they felt that sense of cocooning. So where does holidays fit in? So on one hand, there's a huge lobby group talking about we got to just focus on price and price and price. But really interestingly, people said, you know, holidays in Ireland, what they're really all about is breaking free and having a sense of fun and a sense of excitement. So we really got into this sense of fun, believe it or not. This was, despite all the challenges of holidays, that one little chink in my mind that I'm thinking about, you know, it's fun. So we actually then went ahead to develop the campaign, and that campaign became called just go back, sorry, one there. It was called The Fun Starts Here, and I don't know if you can hear it there, but it's all shot actually here in Galway, just off the coast of Galway, and it talked about the different, the fun starts here in Ireland and all the things you can do, and the whole campaign line was the fun starts here. So it's kind of counterintuitive at the time to say, well, let's focus on that, and it had a huge impact. So overall, the campaign was going very well at this point. So now at this stage we've probably grown the market by about 60%. This was shot just down on Shop Street there, and the whole sense of getting away, discovering time, spending time together. So let's not focus on price. Of course price would happen in the industry, look at the price, but really just the overall category. So then the next stage of this campaign, the third round of it was, I suppose, around 2010. And I'm going to come back to that actually in a minute about that research we did around that, because there was another big thing that happened out of that. So then this runs out of stream in terms of maybe around 3 years into the campaign. And so where do we go next? And so the next big focus for us was segmentation. So let's really look at the market. So it was going very well, perception very strong. So again, what we did was a lot of work, huge amount of data in terms of what the market, what people were interested in, and we focused on 3 best prospects. So we focused on 52% of the market and absolutely discounted the other 50%, and they became three very different, and created 3 different isolated campaigns. And my own favourite one was this one, whereby it was targeting a particular type of family. This is about a family that want to really go away. And what's interesting for them is to spend time together, doing lots of things and so on. And even in the design of this campaign here, you can see the way we did it was just taking into account some of the points that Emer and Jonathan were talking about. It was done in such a way that it's almost clips of people's holidays. So we built a lot of online and social elements to that, where people sent us in breaks and so on. So overall, it was a great campaign. The net result of it all was we doubled the size of the market. And that was really by applying very much marketing principles that Jim and Aidan and Anne and Christine would have been talking about. So that was an interesting one. So from there, just to talk a little bit about the international perception of Ireland. So in terms of, because really to grow the economy, we need to get more international people here from a tourism point of view. So at the time, again, we were looking at how international people saw Ireland, and this was the hypothesis. It's kind of lovely buildings and so on. I remember looking at a blog actually from New York, and there was this picture of the Cliffs of Moher, of course, very all good, inanimate kind of thing. But I looked a little bit closer, and it was this guy who was a journalist in National Geographic, and there he was. You can just see him on the edge, having his little mountain bike. This is not officially sanctioned by Fáilte Ireland, I should say. And he's there on on the edge of the cliff, and there's a little bit closer. There they were. And so that whole sense of living on the edge, extreme, and so on. And it was more compounded then when we were researching a bit further. Was Red Bull had come over at the time, and Red Bull had decided to have a big global campaign in Ireland, shot in Mullaghmore, where they brought windsurfers around in February. And you can see the weather. I mean, I don't know, this was going, and the great thing about this was this whole thing went hugely viral, and it talked about Ireland as this great place to go and have breaks. So we thought, what, maybe it isn't so bad that we rain all the time here, and that it's not the best weather. So we looked at it, and then you looked at the west coast of Ireland and think, okay, well, there's so much similarities between what's on the west, and we looked at, and you think, because there's some focus on the differences, but thinking of the west coast, you have the Burren, and then you come into Galway, you come into Connemara. Of course, there's lots of differences, but there's huge similarities in so we put a lot of work onto developing a brand essence and actually the science behind things. Okay, well, let's look at it. And then we said, okay, actually there's a road that leads all the way along the west coast. It's a load of other roads, it's a load of different roads, it's not one road, but it does actually, you could technically drive from Derry all the way down to Kinsale without breaking it. And then we found out that this was the longest unbroken coastal driving route in the world, which was fantastic. The Americans don't have anything that's biggest in the world. And so from that, we created a concept which eventually was called the Wild Atlantic Way. And it has been a great rallying call, a rallying point for the industry, and really has been very, very positive for growing. And in terms of the Wild Atlantic Way and brand, when I think about the brand there, you think that it's just signposts, and of course it is just signposts in many respects, but the truth of it, in terms of living the brand, developing the brand, interesting what Emer said about the brand advocates, what it really is a huge collection of small businesses. These are some of them up and down the west coast that are really getting into it, believe it, live it in terms of their social media, in terms of what they're talking about, their customer experience. And when you talk to any of these people now, this is theirs. This is their business, their property. So really, it's been an interesting project to work on. And that sense of multiplicity of different approaches is something that another project I just want to talk about that came to the fore was going back to that time of researching with Fáilte when people felt really snowed in, and this was a headline in one of the newspapers. I remember it was the day the IMF came into town, and it was a really dark day for the country. And from that, research we were doing, and people felt very most families were hit by unemployment or debt or business closure or emigration or something. But within it all, they were saying, I'd love just to be able to do something myself. There was this. So the insight we got from the research was Irish people, despite all this really difficult place, Irish people want to work together to get the country moving again. So from that, we came up with this concept, which we said, well, you know what? Maybe if people just they had these ideas that they'd have events and invite people in from internationally and have these events, and that idea became known as the Gathering, which was a really great project. A huge skepticism, actually, I should say, at the start of that project. Most people, when I was developing it, said there's absolutely no way this can work for this reason and that reason and the other reason. But a lot of very, very good people did believe in it. But nevertheless, there was a lot of skepticism. Our first business plan had 26 counties, 10 new events per county, so that'd be 260 events. And then once there was a political traction, it was, okay, well, let's double it. There's no basis for doubling it, let's double it. So it's 520 events, which point we're like, Jesus, will we do this? End result, there's about 5,900 events registered with us, but a lot more actually happened. But I remember there was one particular weekend that I was here in Galway, and I thought, you know what, maybe this actually might work, because we climbed the Reek. And coming down at the bottom of the Reek, there was this signpost, Gathering for Faith. Absolutely nothing to do with us, didn't even know who did it, what this was. Because the whole idea was open source, get people to come up with ideas. So this is one that they were organising. And then from there we were driving over to Clifton. And a friend of mine from college actually here rang me and said, you know what, I have this idea. Have you heard of the Gathering idea? I have this idea that we gather everybody who was born from our class, who was born in 1973, and we'll have this big event on Inisheer Island. And anyway, lo and behold, it did actually happen. It was a brilliant event. It was about 85 people and kids and everything came. It was a super event. And then later on that weekend, I was driving back from Clifton, and I saw this in Furbo, which was the side of the road, Gathering the Furbica, and they were doing their thing. And then the very last one was actually in Ballyconneely earlier on. This is my favourite one. The Gathering, Ballyconneely and surrounding areas gathering, come back to Ballyconneely. So it was a great project, and overall, I suppose there's so many ways of measuring success, but in terms of social capital and the amount of engagement, and it got people ownership and felt part of things. But in just the pure raw numbers, the North American market, as Medita would know very well in terms of the treasure chest and all of the data that's there, the North American market spend more money, they go around a lot more, and Cashback, of course, know all about this. They spend more, they stay longer. And North America, so everybody in Europe wants North America to come in to be their chosen, to be their prize. And North America into Europe that year was -3, and North America into Ireland that year was +18, and almost all driven by that broader diaspora market. So it was a great project to be involved in. And then the final one I'm just going to talk about a little bit is the thing I'm working on now, which is the Ireland 2016 Centenary Programme. And it was a really interesting project, not being a historian myself. And here's the brand we've created. So in sense of branding and really trying to tangibilize what this means. The brand is 1916. The 7 diamonds signify the 7 signatories, and it's the closing of a chapter. 2016, the opening of a new chapter. So really trying to, by visually showing people that this is not just about a point in time, this is about a full centenary. And Clark Morticade Blean, we very deliberately front end the Irish language in terms of very much as part of our identity. And in terms of, so we launched the programme in last Easter time, this Easter time just gone. Thankfully it's landed very well. And just to give you a sense, a couple of things to let you know about it, we said, what is this idea about? So any project, what's the provenance of the project? What are we going to hang our hat on? So you talk about brand essence and what's going to connect for people. So because there's so many voices in here, there's so many political, there's relatives, there's media, there's all kinds of stakeholders. So and a lot of people were focusing on who shot where, who, when, where, how. So we said, okay, let's step back and say, well, the real idea here. The proclamation was written 100 years ago, very powerful document. It was kind of like the vision document at the time. It talked about a republic, which in itself was a radical idea. We were part of the British Empire. We're the first country to break away from the British Empire. A republic guaranteeing religious and civil liberty, equal rights, equal opportunities, which of course, even in the context of the marriage referendum we just had, all its citizens to pursue the happiness and prosperity, to say, well, let's pursue happiness and prosperity. At the same time, with the filthiest slums in Europe, with the biggest red light district in Europe, 6 out of 10 people died before the age of 10. So I mean, that was a big vision, the whole like cherishing all the children equally. So we said, okay, 100 years on, let's try and get people to focus in on that. So we've developed a program around that, the 7 strands, but in order to really put it together, we did a huge amount of consultation with stakeholders. And what people told us, there's a few overarching things that over above the strands that we're going to focus on. First of all is the role of the people involved, the signatories, the executed leaders. We're really concerned that they wouldn't be appropriately taken into account. So we have them very much all throughout the strands. The second one is an interesting one. Overarching strand was the flag, and people found hugely passionate about the flag that has been hijacked by terrorists, by protesters, by all kinds of organisations over the past, and some people actually just don't feel comfortable with the flag as a consequence. So that flag, of course, was created in 1848 by Thomas Marr down in Waterford, Mel, down in your new neck of the woods, and so this is the green of nationalism, the white of peace, the orange of unionism, so it symbolises an island of multiple identities living together in harmony. So how do we get that? So we've done a lot of things. One of the really interesting things we've done is the army. We've got 2 army officers to hand deliver a handmade flag to every primary school in the country. We've done about 1,250 in the last 3 weeks, and it's really having a brilliant impact. So they don't talk in any militaristic way. They talk about the flag, the fact that we're only a peace army of peace uniquely. We only go to peacekeeping missions. We have the longest unbroken peacekeeping record of any country in the world now. I'm just trying to get a sense of what the flag stands for. And the third overarching strand is the role of women. And women, of course, played a massive role in 1916. Huge leadership roles across the Concannon, Constance Markovich, Elizabeth Skinner, and in 1966, not that many people here would remember 1966, but there was a big commemoration then as well. And it was very singular, it was very triumphalist, it was very 7 hero males, and the role of women was essentially typixed out. It was almost completely airbrushed. So we're really going to focus on the role of women and the role of women over the last 100 years in Ireland, and look at it in the context of creating positive role models for young girls today. So the 7 programme strands, as I say, and I'm going to just really quickly give you a run through them just to use the opportunity. The first strand is state ceremonial. We'll have 40 events that are the state, where the state pays its respects to about that time. The major focus will be on Easter Sunday, but there's about 6 events every year the state will do of this scale, whereas next year we're doing 40. So it's a big area, that particular strand. Second one is historical reflection, and this reflects the academic community in particular, hugely concerned about the fact that we're saying, look, that 1916 would be misappropriated or put in a way or that mightn't be respectful. So we have a big programme of capital investment. We're investing about €30 million this year in 7 major capital projects, like for example the GPO, we're building a visitor centre there, and just out the road in Chocolate Street in Connemara we're developing a centre there that'll be open in the summertime. There's just examples of that. And then through our cultural institutions have responded very well. The National Museum will have the biggest ever 1916 exhibition in the world, 12 times the size of its current one, free for all citizens to go and see. Things like the flag will be there. And the third level sector have responded massively. We have huge programs from all the third level institutions. Indeed, NUIG recently launched its own program. 54 of the academic staff have been involved. The president here brought a lot of academics together and said, of course it's centred in humanities and history, but also he brought together the drama people. So they have a conference on 1916 in political drama, stroke 1916 as political drama. The legal people are doing it. As recently as this morning, we had a meeting with Apple and the education unit who are going to do a whole series of ebooks and so on. So major response from the universities. The third strand is living language and Changavyo, and the reason we have that is that the language was hugely important at that time. Still, of course, it's very important still, but at the time it was a metaphor for sovereignty, because people didn't want just sovereignty to become our own bureaucracy. We had a bureaucracy already from London. It was sovereignty of the mind, and the language. 6 of the 7 signatories were members of Conor na Gaeilge, so we have a huge programme that we'll be announcing next Thursday with the Taoiseach around the Changavyo. We brought 31 organisations down to Connemara in about 6 months ago to workshop that. The fourth strand is youth and imagination, which is an interesting one because the project really is the challenge has been set by the Cabinet Committee, which is chaired by the Taoiseach, say, look, how do we get children and young people involved in this? Because they have to be really engaged. So we have a big schools programme. And interestingly, just from a media point of view, we have decided against advertising in its traditional sense, but we're doing a lot of content partnerships. So recently the Irish Times did a supplement for all primary and secondary schools and the Independent and so on. So it's a different way of using the media, and like a lot of things we're looking at there is getting young people engaged. So with one project, just Marhampla, is Proclamation for a New Generation, where every school, the thinking there is that it's action learning, getting kids involved. So we're going to get every school in the country to write a new proclamation, which comes in 2 parts. First of all, they have to understand what the proclamation was, who wrote it, why they wrote it, when they wrote it. And then part B is, so what's important to you now? Proclaim what's important. What does Republic mean to you? What does equality mean? And then we're not going to pick any winners. We're going to publish them all. And the academic community say it's going to be the biggest crowdsourcing of youth imagination ever, to see what the themes are coming from young people. The 5th strand is cultural expression. The people involved at that time were very cultured people, poets, writers and artists and so on. So we have a major programme through the Arts Council, through the Film Board, through the various cultural institutions. And all of this is on Ireland.ie, by the way, all the details there. This is just a touch of, and one of the interesting things we did, again, just trying to communicate with people on how do we taught a little bit differently. So when we put the program out there, one of the dangers is something like this becomes the preserve of the academic community or people who are naturally into history. But how do you get the punters involved? So what we did was we came up with the concept of RTE whereby let's say, okay, let's close down O'Connell Street and had talks and lectures in Wynn's Hotel and in the central, in all these different GPO and so on. And we estimated about 20,000 to 30,000 people would come, depending on the weather and so on. And by about 2:30 in the afternoon, the Garda Síochána rang us, called us and said, there's now 120,000 people on O'Connell Street. It was an enormous number of people and way oversubscribed. And the great news was there was absolutely zero social problems or social disorder, if you like. Social order problems, and it was great. It was kind of a day that citizens took it back. So from that, we're going to develop another major event like that, but on a much more ambitious scale in 2016. The sixth strand is community participation, and how do we get the country involved? And with that, it's about building networks and the concept of team of teams. And from that, the local authority network have been a major partner. So we've asked every local authority to appoint coordinators, to appoint committees, and so on. And we went on the road and we said, okay, let's do 26. We'll do one in every county, a workshop, just to say like this now. And we shared the program and then break them into groups of 6 and people workshop the ideas and what do they want to do. So we planned to do 26. We ended up doing 84 because this interest was just off the charts. And some people said, this is all Dublin, or this is just a history project. So the first week we went to the likes of Longford, which was, no signatories, no executed leaders, nothing happened whatsoever in Longford related to 1960. Not that, no offence Longford, I don't know if anything happens on a regular day. But so we went in backstage theatre in Longford, and after very little promotion, just a little bit in the local radio and the local paper, the place was rammed, all ages, and people said, this is our centenary. So the consequence of all that is every local authority has written a plan now, and the 1,800 events that we just announced last week all over the country. Brilliant programmes here in Galway, city and county as well, and you can just see some of the samples of the front of some of those programmes. Again, we're trying to take that consistency through the brand. As Jim would have said, tangibilising the intangible, in terms of really kind of give them a sense of ownership. You can see Wexford colours and so on, but very much part of an overall brand family. The final strand is global and diaspora, and the thinking here was, look, we have 6 million people on the island, but 70 million people identify themselves as Irish around the world. 36 million people, for example, the last US census said they were Irish. So if they all came home, we'd sink. So, but no, we sat down with embassies and workshop with them as to what they do, and we thought, England, America, Australia be where the action was, but it was right. We were blown away. I mean, Argentina, the first country to recognise Ireland as a republic, all the way through Africa, where our missions have had such an impact over the years. India. So now we have 1,000 events in 100 cities all over the world. So it's fantastic buy-in. So really, when you think about 2016 for us, we're saying, look, what is it? It's a national invitation for as many citizens and people, residents and people of Irish interest around the world to, first of all, remember the past. What was the past about? We have a revolutionary past. We shouldn't be ashamed of that. Lots of countries have revolutionary pasts. And you can't unspill the milk. I mean, we did what we did. But we want to create a sense of debate as well. And one of the things actually on that is, if you go back about 18 months ago, John Bruton came on to primetime and said, this should never have happened. And you'd swear he just killed someone on live television because there was such a reaction to what he said. So what we're trying to say is, look, it's not so bad to have an opinion like that. So one of the things we're doing is, Mar Hampla, is we're going to sponsor the Irish Times debates. For the first time in 56 years, they're going to be sponsored. So all the third level institutions, there'll be 70 debates, will all be themed 2016. So they'll be talking about, was it right, was it wrong, was it good, was it bad? So that sense of debate and respect for different opinions. But let's remember the past. Secondly is reflect on the last 100 years as we built a republic. So what does it mean in terms of all the sacrifices our parents' generation made in terms of rural electrification, building an education system, building a country, imperfect and all as it is. It's a fantastic story to tell. And then look to the future, 100 years from now. I mean, what will it be like 100? Will we still have an unarmed police force? One of the only countries in the world to have an unarmed police force. Will we still have the systems and the huge collegiate and community spirit we have in Ireland? So it gives a sense of a time to reflect and an interesting time. So I think I've taken up enough time. That gives just a sense of some of those projects. And thanks very much for inviting me along. It's brilliant to be back again. I feel like I have to do an exam or something. And it's great. We have one of our, in the project we have 2 DNP people. Sarah's here and Anna. Just want to say, Corgan more. It's great. Congratulations on 35 years. And let's look forward to the next 35. Thanks very much.